restart because I
I
pressed
was
the button.
well, because I did not
So
have. It didn't show me that. It still said you hadn't pressed it when I said it. Lag.
here-
It'll get you every time.
We'll see if we can create a comedy of errors for the beginning of every What the What stream. Not
See,
like on purpose. We'll just see if we can do it.
Seems pretty likely, actually.
So, haircut?
Yes, all of them, most of them. I feel good.
How was that experience for you?
Yeah, no, just in time for the heat wave. So, and I did not get the usual kind of buzz down in the back. I had them actually cut so I could. I liked the way that the long hair was kind of doing the brush aside thing. I just didn't like how much of it there was.
I think it looks good.
Thank you. Yeah, and the sides and back are not as short as I usually put them because people like LJ kept telling me how much they liked the hair. So I thought, well, I don't need to buzz it. I just need it off my ears.
I wonder how much these days a professional appearance impacts people's success within the game industry.
I think more than it did before because of the rise of streaming and podcasting.
You think looking professional on podcasts and streams is important?
I didn't,
because we're sitting here in our t-shirts.
Now you
right?
just said what they look like, not that they look professional.
Well,
having
isn't what they look like
style,
professional?
Not being just grungy with your hair stringy and looking bedraggled and kind of scary.
Could bedraggled and scary be your style?
I guess it could. You'd have to work for it. I mean, look at people like not in the game industry, but look at Alan Moore, who's made a career out of being stringy and hairy and scary looking.
But in his case, did his success come prior to people having a good idea what he looked like?
Oh yeah. I don't know how far anyone's gonna succeed in the game industry because of how they look. Not on the design side, anyway.
Not even Ed Greenwood.
Yeah, I mean, Ed Greenwood has the advantage of looking kind of like I would expect Ed Greenwood to look without having any idea what Ed Greenwood looked like.
Looks very wizardly. Always has.
He does. Yeah. And I can easily see him sitting on a table with Elminster and some other people eating ice cream directly out of the carton and talking about 5th level spells.
Yeah. How he spared no expense.
Yeah, and how he spared no expense. But, you made an interesting statement that you didn't think that anyone was going to be successful on the design side based purely on their appearance. And certainly there are people that complain that the good-looking people have a built-in advantage when trying to get people to buy their designs, especially on things like Kickstarter.
Howdy, Ryan.
LJ says hi, Ryan.
Yeah.
Your handle face.
Yeah, I guess I can still consider it. That's the fundraising side. Whether or not people like the design is completely separate, except that it's becoming linked to it. But that's whether or not you can raise money to publish your thing before anyone knows how good your design is. So, I don't know. Does that make you success in the game industry?
I mean, I think a case could be made that there are cults of personality within the game industry, and looking good can be one way to start a cult of personality.
Right. Yeah,
right. To get people to
can too.
I mean, having people like you and therefore defend your stuff can give you success, even if your stuff isn't as good as someone else's.
Yes.
The flip side of that is, did you hear the story about my wearing a suit to the Wizards of the Coast job interview I did in '99?
No.
All right, so I went to a in-person job interview at Wizards of the Coast in '99. I believe you were there for the actual interview. And I wore a suit. I wore a tie and a jacket and dress shoes. And I wore that on the plane to fly from Oklahoma all the way to Seattle, get picked up by Eric Cagle in his VW Bug, drive by Taco Bell, loan him 15 cents so that he can get all the tacos he wants, which he paid me back the day before I left Wizards of the Coast. Show up, and everyone's saying hi, and they're all in T-shirts and shorts and flip-flops. I mean, not everyone, but, you know, Peter Atkinson frequently wandered around in a Hawaiian shirt, shorts, and flip-flops as the owner of Wizards of the Coast. And a lot of people looked at me with my very serious red tie and tie, you know, all the way up.
We appear to be lagging.
Apparently we're lagging. There isn't much I can do about that, folks. So sorry. Hopefully, if you want to, you can come pick up the story on the YouTube channel later. And several people were like, you know, this isn't exactly a suit environment, as if they were worried that I would not take Wizards of the Coast seriously, or I felt like I'm wearing a suit and I don't want to work anywhere where anyone doesn't wear a suit. And I always said the same thing, right? I get that. I've seen you all, but I wanted to show you that I was serious about the job interview, that I'm taking this as a job as opposed to an opportunity to get paid to be a geek and not get anything done. And without going into the details of who, I am told that the interview after me, the same day, someone showed up in their Burger King drive-through uniform and said that they had to cut the interview short so they could go pick up their shift. Now, I am not saying that someone can't be a better game designer than I am while wearing a Burger King outfit. But I am saying that my guess is that if the two of us were neck and neck, if there was one position, and Wizards of the Coast was trying to pick between the guy that showed up in a suit and the person that showed up in a Burger King uniform, that they'd think, well, the person in a suit wore a suit. They took that extra step. And that might not be fair, right? If you've got a Burger King shift and you don't have time, it can be really hard to interview for a job and look for a job while you've got a full-time job. So I sympathize. But I always felt that story did show that these little things that have nothing to do with how good a game designer you are, or how interesting a personality you are, or how well you get along with people, those things really can impact, especially narrow cases where no one is sure, you know, who do we want to go with?
Yeah, no, always putting your best foot forward, making it clear you're putting your best foot forward is thing. I would think that of the things that impacted, the fact that the person said, I need to cut the interview short, would have had more impact than the fact that he was wearing he or she were wearing a Burger King uniform.
You could be right, but even that isn't necessarily fair because they don't want to get fired, right? I mean, if they come in and they tell you, hey, I've got a time constraint, at least you know they can manage their time.
I guess, but it's not like we told them. I don't know. It's been so long since in fact, I never worked in
more than 20 years.
Yeah, but I mean, since I had a job like that, where he or she picked whatever time they were coming in, and they didn't get told you must be in at 1 o'clock on Thursday.
Sure.
So, picking a time that was back to back with their Burger King shift is actually showing poor time management.
My experience with Burger King shifts suggests that you could wake up in the morning on what was supposed to be your day off and be told, hey, you need to come cover this shift or you're going to get fired.
Yeah.
Which is BS, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So there's a local fast food ice cream and burger place here, Brahms. You've been there. We've taken you there when you were visiting.
I tasted it. It was delicious.
Yeah. My wife worked at Brahms at one point, and she told them like 6 weeks in advance, hey, I have to have this weekend off. I'm going to the medieval fair. So that's a big event. It's a big local event. It happens on that weekend. And they kept saying, fine, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. But they only did their scheduling each week, 1 week at a time. So Ryan Costello just told me that 15 cents in 1990s money is like 60 cents today. So that was real. Well, I mean, that's why I still had 15 cents in my pocket, right? I do not bother to keep 15 cents in my pocket these days. So the local Brahms only did that shift. They would make their schedule each week, and they scheduled her for the weekend. And she went in and she said, hey, I'm not able to work this weekend. And they're like, well, if you don't show up, you'll be fired. She said, I've been telling you for 6. All right, so Stan has 15 cents, right?
I have 14 cents.
I bet you could find another penny if you had to.
But it's not in my pocket.
I've been telling you for weeks that I'm not able to do this. And like, it doesn't matter. You're scheduled. If you don't show up, you'll be fired. Not only will you be fired, but you'll never be able to work for Brahms again. Like that was some sort of massive threat that LJ's lifelong career goal of working at Brahms. I don't have a problem with people that work with Brahms, and if you want to like start your own franchise or become a manager, those are perfectly good jobs. But the idea that a teen to college age person is going to be terrified that they won't be able to work for that fast food restaurant anymore just shows me that perhaps that person was not the person that should be making the schedules when you've got a lot of teens and college age people working for you.
Hey, Brandon, if you find yourself coming to the Med Fair next year, give us a holler.
Yeah, if anyone comes to Med Fair next year, here in Norman, Oklahoma, it's one of the largest free Renaissance festivals in North America. And that's not because we're so awesome. It's because it's a little before Scarborough, and a lot of people who are on their way to Scarborough stop here to make gas money. It would not be worth it to them to come to the Norman Medieval Fair, but as long as they're driving to Texas anyway, they might as well pick up a few extra bucks. Let us know. We can arrange for an outing. We can all go buy a giant turkey drumstick together. Get some funnel cakes.
So, this puts me in mind of you know what we haven't said yet?
What have we not said yet?
We haven't said that this is what the what.
It's true, we haven't said this is what the what.
Oh, Brandon meant Brahms.
Well, fine. If anyone's going to come to Norman, Oklahoma and eat at Brahms, let us know. We might go there and buy a scoop of sherbet with you.
Right.
Yes, this is what the what. I'm Owen Casey Stevens. This is my co-host Stan with an exclamation point, and off screen, because that's where she wants to be, is my lovely wife LJ, monitoring all of your comments.
Hello.
And keeping us on task, and if necessary, bouncing a foam brick off my head because I'm being too loud.
And hello,
anyway,
Robert.
so this talk about Ren fairs puts me in mind to make a comment about episode 2 of Loki.
Ah. Okay, so spoilers.
Does that seem? Oh, should we? What kind of like don't listen spoiler do we need to do? Is that good enough?
I think we have now given people plenty of time to change the channel or mute or fast forward. And I'll tell people now, if you're watching this video later, we'll give you the hi sign after the spoiler when it's safe to come back. So you can fast forward till you see us doing this again. Okay. There you go.
So episode 2 opens at a Renaissance fair.
Yep.
And the call at the bottom says Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Yep.
But it looked just like this permanent setup Ren Fair outside of Milwaukee in Bristol, the Bristol Renaissance Fair. They've got this couple of acres of land. They've built permanent buildings, some of them including or out of trees in the area. It's a beautiful place and a fun thing, a fun Renaissance fair, which I can highly endorse. But knowing that much, they opened that thing and said Oshkosh, Wisconsin. They walked through the gate, and I'm like, that's not Oshkosh, bagosh. That is Bristol.
I mean, it makes sense.
Nothing in the credits showed whether or not it really was that, or it was just a setup that they got it somewhere in Hollywood.
So, folks, if you've got connections to the Loki television show location scouting crew, let us know whether or not that was Oshkosh or whether it was Bristol.
But
it makes sense to me.
Not Oshkosh.
It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me wherever it was that they would have found a permanent or semi-permanent Ren Fair and staffed it, especially off-season, in order to shoot, because the last thing you want to do is go to a live running Ren Fair as the Loki Marvel television crew and try and get anything done. All right, so are we done discussing Loki?
Yeah, that's all I had.
No, we're not, apparently.
Some of us need this, you know.
Well, LJ was amused by the comment on Loki. Some of us need this, you know. All right, so we're done now.
Yes,
yeah.
All right. So, hi, sign, Stan. All right,
good.
We're done with Loki spoilers. Good. All right, moving on.
So, Robert says someone has to look out for Wisconsin, which made me think, wait a minute. Don't we have somebody here who can talk about Wisconsin?
I don't know, Stan. Do we have someone here who can look out for Wisconsin and speak to it?
Look out for Wisconsin? In what way?
Yeah. Keep their best interests in mind. Mention them as a good thing.
I just
How
did.
long did you live in Wisconsin and why, Stan? Tell us a story.
I lived in Wisconsin for 2 years, almost to the day, and it was because I was working at TSR. I drove in the middle of September in 1995, and I drove out early September 1997 because Wizards of the Coast had bought the company and moved everything out to Seattle. And
that was-
I rather liked Wisconsin, except for the winter. I hated the winter. But, I don't like winter. It's not Wisconsin's fault. It's not like it surprised me.
So, you liked Wisconsin even though there's no ocean?
It was okay. I would I would not choose to live there. As Owen knows, I've said it many times, I like to live within range of the coast. I like being near water. And Great Lakes, I found, don't count.
Because we have a not Great Lake right near us here in Oklahoma. We got Lake
That's even
Thunderbird,
worse.
which is
lovingly nicknamed Lake Dirty Bird.
it has been called Lake Dirty Bird by people. Yes. Well, I mean, there's a particular odor when they turn the lake over, so the stuff at the bottom doesn't keep sitting there.
There's a particular odor several times a day around the ocean too.
Yeah, well, the ocean sort of turns itself over, which is part of the entire point.
But
so
I liked Wisconsin.
It would have been not long after that I saw you at the TSR Writers Workshop.
It would have been the next summer, I think, when we did that.
Yeah.
Summer of '98.
I thought it was the 97 Writers Workshop.
Nope.
Oh, it's somewhere in there.
Stan says no.
Nope.
I will have to find my notes.
Dominic asks
Absolutely not.
We've been asked if Turn It Over is a 5th level druid spell. No, it's just a druidic version of Stench, and it takes a lot more effort, but it's probably not above. Yeah, it's Stinking Cloud. We have Stinking Lake. It's 2nd or 3rd at most. Probably a bigger area. But I mean, if you look at Entangle, druids have stupidly big area spells as it is. In a current 1st edition Pathfinder game that I am playing, I've got a character that has access to Entangles, and the GM has been very clear. Look, I'm okay with you having Entangle, and at 2nd level, I'm okay with you having, I think it's Sickening Entangle, and at 3rd level, Thorny Entangle. And he says, but I don't want to see those pulled out every fight. Not because they're too effective or I dislike it, but because it slows down play. And I was like, no, that's reasonable. That's good. It does. It's a huge area. It does slow down play. So I use them sparingly.
Got a druid in our 5th age game, and right now we're talking about the summoning velociraptors break that came up in a YouTube video we were watching a couple of weeks ago, and he hasn't done it yet, but we're talking about giving it a try and seeing how abusive it is.
Dominic, he says he has stinky seaweed in Tampa Bay and it smells like home. I know exactly what he means because oil refineries remind me of being nearby, as well as cow pastures.
Yep. Yeah, there are certain scents that remind me of home, and most of them are unpleasant.
Yes.
The waving wheat, I'm not kidding. The waving wheat can smell sweet. It's a very pleasant smell, but there are stockyards closer to where I go than there are wheat fields for whatever reason. So, and I know the reason, actually. It's the transport hub.
Robert says he can tell us where that scene was filmed, that scene that we're not discussing anymore.
Oh, tell us where the scene was filmed.
How many velociraptors?
How many velociraptors does it take? Okay. Yeah. So we're waiting for that information. Elger's going to get it for us.
Okay. Let's say, am I missing something, or we're standing on this? We're standing pat?
Wait. Since I have insisted that we not have a plan or a schedule or do any prep work for this show, there will occasionally be awkward pauses as one of us expects the other to leap in and fill the gap.
Apparently, it was the Georgia Renaissance Festival grounds in Fairburn.
Did you catch that?
Nope.
The Georgia Renaissance Festival grounds in Fairburn.
All right.
There you go. Georgia Renaissance grounds in Fairburn.
All right. But still, shout out to Bristol Renaissance Fair.
Okay.
And enough of that now.
Enough of that? Okay. All right. Moving on to other subjects. So, did you see the slight kerfuffle that I'm afraid I added to the fuff level of about whether Wizards of the Coast was going to be buying Paizo anytime soon?
No,
Oh my
no,
God.
but I can imagine it quite clearly.
I found myself sort of motivated to leap in and say, I can answer that question for you. No. And I don't feel like it takes a whole lot more explanation than that. But there were a number of reaction videos, and a bunch of them were from people who seem like perfectly intelligent, well-read, reasonable people who kept saying things that make me feel old, like 4th edition, which I've never played, but I'd like to, or you got to remember it in 3.5 for those of you that are too young to remember 3.5. And I feel ancient when people talk like that. I have fond memories of 1st edition AD&D and 2nd and 3rd and 3.5, and I even have fond editions of 4th edition. It wasn't my favorite edition, but
No, I had
actually
fun playing it sometimes. I would not ever have. I often said I have fun playing it. It's just not when I want to play D&D.
yeah.
I did like 4th edition. I like the fact that in the first few levels you felt really powerful, like you could do a lot of things. But I hated the fact that when you got higher up in levels, 4th, 5th, 6th level, you had to trade in stuff that you've gotten used to doing, and I didn't like that part. There was a 1st edition.
I have often felt that 4th edition is a brilliant job of game design, and that some of the things it did were just things that a big fraction of their crowd didn't want.
Yeah.
But I also felt like the marketing of 4th edition sort of highlighted some of the less popular choices instead of, and I can see trying to get ahead of something, but like the fact that gnomes were not a playable race. They didn't just shrug and say, we'll get back to it. They released animated videos about gnomes saying, I've got a lair. And that just does not seem to me like the way to go if you know you're already annoying part of your fan base.
Somebody clip that little bit. I got a lair. Make a meme out of it. It's hysterical.
It is hysterical, but being funny isn't always the way to placate people.
All praise back up.
Yeah. There are a lot of things. I remember I was one of the people that got to playtest 3rd edition. So if you happen to crack open a first printing third, I'm one of the people that got to playtest 3rd. I also playtested 4th, and I had the same thing to say about 4th, which was that I said about 3rd. I was just coming from different places, which is that this seems like a good role-playing game. I'm not sure it feels like D&D. When I was moving from 2nd to 3rd, I was not sure during the playtest it felt like D&D. And then in the end, it did. And I had the same reaction when I was playtesting 4th. I'm not sure this feels like D&D. And in the end, for me, 4th edition didn't. But there are certainly some things about 4th edition. I mean, like the idea of being bloodied when you're at half hit points.
There were definitely brilliant things about 4th edition that fit in with any edition. But yeah, let's not rag on 4th. It's too.
No, I don't want to rag on 4th edition. I wanted to discuss the parts of it that I didn't want to rag on.
All right.
Oh, okay. Let's do that. That's fine.
We've got a lot of comments now, and I think we're going back and forth between editions here.
Yeah, I mean, I am in no way interested in an edition war, but I do think that looking at these things is one way to try to learn what best practices in the industry are. Right? It's like I look at Kickstarters frequently, and I can look at 2 Kickstarters that are equally late and equally expensive and have equally invested fan bases. And if one is being seen as a burning trash fire with constant death threats, and the other is people saying, look, we'll get it when we'll get it. It's okay. I want to see how those creators are handling those 2 Kickstarters. Because I want to learn from the what works and what doesn't.
How not to set a trash fire.
How to set a trash fire.
How not to.
That we're discussing in comments. I missed something.
Well, there was
Bitey of Brackenwood.
I don't know the name of that.
Okay.
There was a gnome that they animated for 4th edition that was all excited
Okay.
that it was a monster now.
Oh yeah, that must be what they're talking about.
Okay.
That's working.
And then they had Tieflings and Dragonborn that a lot of people really liked adding to the game. So and that we find in 5th edition.
So Jeff has brought up the ad campaign, and that telling people you're going to fix stuff that they don't feel like is broken seems like a bad angle to push. He felt alienated by that ad campaign.
I think a lot of people felt alienated by the ad campaign, and it's hard.
And Ryan agrees.
It's hard to know in advance how people are going to react to something, right? And no matter what you're doing, when you're trying to advertise a game, like I see so many ads that people are saying, it's like D&D, but better. And it is very clear that that group of people are super excited that they can offer you a better version of D&D. And anytime anyone says that, I immediately think, okay, so these are your house rules. You want me to pay for your house rules. I have no no exciting sense just from that this is actually something I'm going to be super excited about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but people really have been saying that since Judges Guild.
Yeah,
Right.
at least.
Like D&D, only better. Okay, Fred.
Well,
which edition of D&D and better how?
And you know, D&D has been the English-speaking North American industry leader in tabletop role-playing games since Judges Guild or before.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that they have always been the leader, even when certain indicators were not showing that they were the leader. So
I think that's absolutely true. And the problem is that the indicators is what information the indicators were based on.
Right. One of the things I mentioned in my blog is that there is no single human being in the world that knows the total sales numbers, income, and profit level of the top 5 role-playing games, and therefore don't even know what the top 5 role-playing games by either gross or net even are.
Right.
And some role-playing games, for that game or that edition of a game, no one knows because that information was not properly maintained. I certainly have sat down and had conversations with people that have had $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 Kickstarters that I'll talk to them, and I'm not going to name them because a lot of these conversations are confidential, or at least private and one corner of the Omni lobby during Gen Con, that they lost money on the Kickstarter. And some of them lost money on the Kickstarter but made it up later, and other people lost money on the Kickstarter and just lost money. That project never turned a profit. And so I can be sitting here with a Kickstarter that made $3,000, and we managed for half of that to be profit. We're pretty happy with that. I mean, I would love to instead do $50,000 and have half of that be profit, obviously. But
right.
So success is so hard to determine from the outside, and it isn't even always easy to determine from the inside, especially until later in the project.
So Jason, thank you for the explanation. Apparently I was the only one that didn't understand. And Robert has made a simple statement that is so deep that I think the entire world needs to hear it.
All right, LJ wants the whole world to hear this statement. What's the statement?
You can talk something up without running something else down.
You can talk something up without running something else down. I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I think it's true, and I think it's important.
And if the entire world could grasp something like that, we might all be better off.
It can be harder. I frequently think that people end up talking things down because it is an easy way to come up with things to say when you're trying to look good. I was involved not too long ago in a Kickstarter for some dice. It was literally just a dice Kickstarter. And one of the problems that Kickstarter had is that there were not a lot of updates. It's like they're still dice. We're not redesigning the dice. The dice, here's what they're going to look like. This is when they'll be printed. This is when they'll be shipped. And there's not a lot you can say after that. But there are a bunch of people that want constant updates on their Kickstarter. And one route that could have gone and didn't, and no one even suggested it, I'm not saying they're not, but I could have seen it, would be to say, well, we don't have anything good to say about our project. Let's talk about how bad other people's dice are. This project just came out with giant bubbles in the resin. And so I think it can be easy to do that, and I think it's a temptation worth avoiding.
like Ryan's comment. The dice, they're cards now.
Your dice come with additional chits because sometimes
So,
shit happens.
Mwah, mwah.
Hey, my wife laughed, and that's all I need for a happy life.
Good on you both.
So we're at about the halfway mark on this episode of What the What. I will
Holy
remind people that
cats.
if you want. I know, the time just flies. I want to remind people that if there's something you'd like to see me and Stan with LJ's able assistance tackle on What the What, you can send a note to owen.stevens@gmail.com, or you can comment either on our Facebook. We stream live, in theory, every Tuesday at 4 o'clock Pacific
Live-ish.
on my Facebook page, which is onk.c.stevens, facebook.com/onk.c.stevens, or on YouTube. And I have a YouTube, which you can click subscribe and all of that stuff.
Are we streaming live to YouTube, or is it
No.
just going up there after the recording?
We are only streaming live to Facebook at the moment because of my technological limitations. So we stream live on Facebook, and then I put it up on YouTube, and right now that's where you catch it.
That's great. I'm not putting that down.
No, I think, right now it's do that or not do this.
This is a better choice.
And there's a line from Adventure Time that I'm a big fan of, which is doing something badly is the first step towards being kind of okay at something.
Right? Can't the politicians understand that?
Oh, no, back off.
Germany,
No
yes.
politics. No politics.
Fine.
Especially no politics from you, because you'll get me started. I can talk politics. It's just not fun.
That's
I
a
want this
different
show to
show.
be. Yes, it's a very different show.
You could still call it What the What, though.
If I had what I felt was an ethical obligation to bring something up in every possible venue, yes, I would check with my co-creators and do it. So LJ's waving her arms. It sounds like we have something.
We actually have a question from Ryan Costello.
Okay, Ryan's got a question.
Thoughts on the upcoming Hasbro RPG?
Thoughts on the upcoming Hasbro RPGs? So Hasbro has a G.I. Joe RPG and a Transformers
I
RPG,
hear-
Power Rangers RPG. Coming out.
First person listed in the design credits is awesome.
Yes, I think the first person listed in the credits of that is awesome, and everyone should look that up. I'm super excited about these projects, just that they're happening, if nothing else. I remember. Go ahead.
I have to say that I also am very excited, and my honest to God, my first reaction was, well, why didn't someone call me? I would have loved to work on that.
My guess is you haven't been talking about how much you love G.I. Joe on social media for the past decade.
Yeah, no, there are plenty of good reasons why. Plenty. But I'm just saying, that was my first reaction.
Well, maybe they'll expand out and you'll get to do the My Little Pony game. Or Hasbro have Micronauts now? I think Hasbro has Micronauts. I think Hasbro has Micronauts and ROM. Because I think the IDW.
So. In which case, yes.
I think the IDW comics.
Hell yes.
So I got to say, if there's anyone out there doing a Micronauts role-playing game or a ROM role-playing game, I and possibly we,
Own me.
yeah, call us. We're professionals who love this stuff. I've been posting Croyer-related things from like 4 different generations of Micronauts for my entire life. So I'm super excited about these projects. To get back to the question, I remember Wizards of the Coast in 2001 constantly hearing about things like putting simple D20 stats on the cards for the back of toys as a pitch, and it kept getting shut down. So without getting into
how excited we all were about the possibility of doing a game for G.I. Joe. It was bubbling excitement.
And it didn't happen. So the fact that it's happening now excites me. I think that's a really cool step. I think it's great and interesting. And I look forward to seeing what they're like and seeing if they bring in a new wave of interest.
Brandon says there is already a My Little Pony game. Tales of Equestria by River Horse Games.
There is already an official My Little Pony RPG. Okay, well, I actually knew that at one time and forgot, because I remember people talking about whether it was going to bite into sales of the Pathfinder-compatible Pony Finder RPG or not. And,
Yeah,
you know...
but then, I mean, there already were several Marvel role-playing games, and there's a new one coming out from that. So just because something exists doesn't mean it's not about to exist.
That does not mean that another one is not coming along. That's absolutely true. Now, if they decided to do a Visionaries RPG, I would be harder pressed to show as much enthusiasm for that. Although, if a Visionaries RPG was coming out, you don't remember Visionaries?
No.
There were toys with little holograms in them?
No.
They had little banners that had a little hologram as part of the banner, and they were Visionaries, and there was like a one-season animated cartoon. And all right, well, my point is, I believe that the same people are handling those licenses, and while I would not be as excited if doing that would get my foot in the door for ROM, Micronauts, Shogun Warriors, any of my beloved childhood IPs, I would do that work. I would make that happen.
Yeah. Gem and the Holograms.
The Gem and the Holograms would make a great RPG.
It would be true.
But I am not the right person to be the main designer for a Gem and the Holograms RPG. I know the right people. I can get them for you. I can get Amanda Hammond and Crystal Fraser and some other folks. I can come up with the people we need for that game. It's just not me.
Right.
Dominic says holding out for the MASK RPG.
Yeah, well, if you have a Transformers RPG and you've got a G.I. Joe RPG and they're using the same system, you pretty much have an MASK or a Mask RPG, because all that is start at G.I. Joe, head towards Transformers, and stop when you're halfway there. Which doesn't mean it. I mean, it'd be a great supplement, but I don't know. Does Ryan know if those RPGs are going to be compatible, if they're going to use the same system? Ryan, if you know and you can tell us, let us know. If you don't know or can't tell us, feel free to just shrug. I was just talking today on my blog, which is owencaseystevens.com, that people need to read their NDAs before they talk about projects, even if the project is published, because you never know what might be limited.
Amber Scott would slay a Gem RPG.
Amber Scott would slay.
That was Robert Emerson. And Ryan says he cannot say.
All right, Ryan can't say if they're compatible. I hope that they use the same core system. If I were designing them, I would have strongly promoted them having the same core system, because personally, I think being able to have a Transformer show up in a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers RPG just makes sense.
But just because they use the core same system does not mean compatibility.
Well, there are degrees of compatibility. Absolutely.
And if you use the same, I mean, for example, if you use the D&D, just to pick a random one, right? Where your stats run from 1 to 18, and you do it for D&D, that's one thing. But you could also do a game. You could do a kaiju game using that, where the stats ran from 1 to 18, and you're a kaiju. Guess what? 1 for a kaiju is not the same as 1 for a rogue, or anyone.
No, although for our specific example, you could then tie the two together and just say your characters have all been hit by Rita Repulsa's enlargement ray. So you are fighting the kaiju, but you are 200 feet tall, as are the kaiju, so you're all on the same scale now.
You could. You definitely could.
Jeff Lee gives us from an article he just read. Nothing was stated about the Power Rangers RPG other than the confirmation that it will be using the 5th edition system. No further elaboration.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
So apparently the word out is that the Power Rangers will use the 5th edition system, which is not a shock. I gotta say, though, that, like Fantasy Age and Modern Age use the same core system, right? The same adventure game engine, which is also Dragon Age and The Expanse. And they are not the same game. They have a certain degree of compatibility.
Right.
I personally would love to see those games licensed out into yet more things that could then overlap. Like, I mean, The Expanse is, and full disclosure, I work for Green Ronin, although not, and I am the Fantasy Age developer, but I wouldn't likely be working on most licensed things unless there was somehow a Micronaut Age game or ROM Age, which I would certainly be a strong advocate for if that licensing came along. But my point is, I think that there are a lot of advantages to those games that would allow you to tweak them so that they will do what you want a specific IP's game to do well, and still have a lot of compatibility and overlap with each other. Because that's important, right? You want, if you're doing a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game, morphing needs to be an important mechanic in the game. Similarly, you want to be able to say, hey, this is the sort of stuff you're going to be doing while you're running around as a teen with attitude, and this is the sort of thing you're going to be doing as a Power Ranger, and they may not be the same sets of things.
Oh, come on.
What?
You don't think they'll be the same sets of things?
Well, I mean, I think frequently you find yourself doing some slice of life things as a teen with attitude, right? If you're looking at Power Rangers, frequently you have to deal with having a summer job and not getting along with people and having misunderstandings and people trying to find your secret ID, and those are mostly done without the helmet and the Super Sentai flute daggers. What? Super Sentai flute daggers. Okay. That wasn't a random sentence like I sometimes give. There are Super Sentai flute daggers, dang it. And there are other things like, fighting Goldar or Platinum or Silver Droid. Some of those are random. Agamemnon. I like Agamemnon better. But that you will do and then there's yet another set of things that you'll do in your Zoids. Zoids. Yeah, and you got to have Teen with Attitude level, Power Ranger level, Power Ranger in Zoid level, everyone combined level.
Absolutely.
Which that's a lot of levels.
That is. It's a lot of levels.
I'm actually now really fascinated to see how that's going to get handled.
Well, it's a good thing, because otherwise you wouldn't have had any interest at all. Oh, wait, no, we've just been talking about how much interest you had already.
I mean, of the three, before I had this realization, Power Rangers was the one I was least excited about. But there really are some game mechanical... I mean, there aren't any game mechanical challenges for G.I. Joe and Transformers that I can't think of a dozen ways to handle off the top of my head, and that have not been handled by very able game designers many times. But power level's a little trickier, and it's not to say that people haven't done it. I think the old WEG Star Wars had like Starship power levels, for example. But there is absolutely, I think, a broader field for innovation in that area of design. LJ's trying to get my attention, so I think we have a thing.
Brandon corrects us. It is Zords. Zoids is a different franchise.
He's absolutely right.
And Ryan Costello suggests showing up in your Burger King interview in your Power Rangers outfit because you have a crime fighting equipment right now.
I mean...
I think that gets you bonus points.
It might.
Bloody men mixed up into the fryer and all hell breaks loose. Noid,
wow.
Oh, Noid is from Domino.
Yeah, the Noid is from Domino,
Yeah.
right? But Zorgs and Zoids and Noids need to be kept separate. They're absolutely right. I had the wrong robotic legger. My bad.
Nords are an entire people, Jeff.
What IP that you don't recall there ever being a role-playing game for would you most like to lead a team to make a role-playing game for, assuming that it was legal and you're being well compensated? I can cheat.
I don't recall there ever being a Godzilla or Toho sci-fi role-playing game. That's got to be high on the list. Has anyone ever actually gotten around to doing a World of Hanna-Barbera role-playing game?
Oh my god.
Because
specifically,
we
I don't think so.
At West End, several of us for a while were pushing this was before, Cartoon Network. So before any of these had come back, they were just lagging in syndication. We wanted to get Johnny Quest and the Herculoids and Space Ghost and make a Hanna-Barbera Action Hour role-playing game, and leave out the goofy ones, leave out the funny ones, or make a separate game for them because we all like that funny stuff too. So that's very high on the list. Let's look over here.
Looking through your list of geeky inspiration.
Just looking at my
No perils of
my bookcase full of things I love.
No Wacky Racers.
No, Wacky Racers I could get behind. I could get behind a Wacky Racers.
Racers and either it's an expansion or bundle it together with the Dashley and Muttley and their flying machines.
Yes, absolutely. Although now I feel like that's a thing I should pitch to Steve Jackson, right? Because they've got Car Wars and they've got Toon. So if there's anyone out there that should have a crossover audience for Wacky Racers and get that pigeon, it's them.
Yes.
I think it stopped that pigeon.
I think you should just do it yourself.
Well, I could do it myself, but I got to come up with something that sounds as good as Wacky Racers. Ridiculous Roadsters doesn't have quite the same ring to it.
Yeah, those would be my top two. Is either Toho or Hanna-Barbera.
I'm
What about
surprised
you?
as there. So definitely Micronauts, which is cheating. So we've been talking about it for quite a while, but to the best of my knowledge, there's never been a Micronauts role playing game. If I really got my dream project, it would be a all-inclusive Micronauts that would grab the 3 or 4 different continuities I'm aware of and present all of them. So old Marvel and Devil's Due and IDW have all of those as options for our Micronauts continuity. But that would be overlapping with Marvel RPGs, so that might be cheating a little bit.
Ooh.
I don't believe that there's ever been a Space Battleship Yamato role-playing game. There was a war game, and there are a lot of big ship in space role-playing games, but I don't believe that there has been although there could be a Japanese language one, which I'm simply not aware of.
So
I don't know of one, but I was trying to think of whether any of those other were the American version. What was the American show that combined the two different anime?
Are you thinking Macross? Robotech?
Yes.
Yeah, there's absolutely a Robotech role-playing game. But that combined 3 different anime.
Yes. Sorry.
So Brandon,
Go men aside. I'm sorry about that.
Someone suggested Pirates of Dark Water as an RPG. I think that would make a great
Wow.
one. It's not one of my dream
Awesome.
projects, but
Woo!
if someone were to do that, I'd be super excited to get on it. I just wouldn't be burning one of my genie wishes on it.
Right.
and then Dominic.
No, but
and
if I were a licensing guy and that popped up, I would say yes, sign that license.
they both had suggestions for the Wacky Racers. Dominic says it's not drive offensively, it's drive ridiculously. And Rand Costello suggests Diabolic Drivers. I like that one.
Diabolic Drivers and Drive Ridiculously have both been suggested for our Wacky Racers.
All right.
Let's say XP for the moment, or
Okay.
Pastiche. Makes me, now that I've said that, I kind of want to just make Pastiche the role-playing game with
There you go.
with rules that are simple enough that you can adapt it to nearly anything, and complex enough that it's not just, hey, roll a d6, and on a 5 or 6 you succeed, tell us how you succeeded. Although even that is not the worst role-playing game idea I've ever had, but that's not fair, because I'm not sure anyone but me has ever seen the worst role-playing game ideas I've ever had, because there are some bad ones. My hard drive is full of. One of the ways I sometimes come up with content or new ideas is to look at bad, failed ideas from 20 years ago and see if, in my decrepit age and beaten experience, a new way to handle that terrible concept leaps forward.
That's right. Oh, that's terrible. This is how I'd really do it.
Yep. It's one of the reasons I like watching bad movies, is that frequently bad movies have some nuggets of cool ideas, and I will immediately think, that idea is cool, and everything over here is stupid, and everything over there is stupid, but here's how you could take that cool idea and do something neat with it. And, if I decide that I want to be inspired by Star Trek or Star Wars, no one is surprised by the end result because everyone knows Star Trek and Star Wars. If I decide to get inspired by Battle Beyond the Stars, well, actually, that'll look a lot like Star Wars, but some other less good movies, the inspiration is less obviously hung right out there. For those,
say hello to Sir Alphonse, Lord Tubbington.
Alphonse speaks to his people.
yes,
Yeah.
Alphonse has opinions. Amongst his opinions are, this is his spot on the desk, so we'll have to share it. So it's only fair. He would probably boost our ratings, honestly.
I'm sure. Having an appearance by Alphonse might be something we should try to convince him is a good idea every week. Come on, Alphonse,
So
stop your appearance.
Let's go a different direction. Let's take an IP that neither of us would have any interest whatsoever in making a RPG out of, and see if we can come up with good ideas for how to do that RPG. And I'm going to pitch one.
I got one more I want to go back to on the other one.
All right, go back.
Because I tried desperately to make this happen, is to get the Weekly World News license back when it was a going concern, back when it was still a printed thing and closer to cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was ever cool. It may have been ironically hipster cool for a while.
Closer. Anyway, yeah. So let's. So
I'm going to throw out an IP, and
Right.
Stan's going to laugh because he's going to know exactly why I chose this IP. And then the two of us will try and come up with a way to make that IP a good role-playing game. Ready?
Yeah.
Coneheads.
Coneheads.
Coneheads. They had a movie. They had a movie and
Dan Aykroyd, Lorraine Newman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Coneheads. I love the Coneheads movie. I think it's got solid continuity. How would it let you're being given a stupid amount of money to make a Coneheads RPG with the understanding that you will make your absolute best effort? What do you do?
Does it have to be a campaign oriented?
No, it's a TTRPG, so it doesn't have to be campaign
I would make
oriented.
it a one night event game.
Yeah.
Yes. What beyond that? I don't know. I'd use a lot of money to hire you to come and help me. But what?
Well,
do
if you're
you
being
have
paid
ideas?
If you're being paid a stupid amount of money, I am happy to take some of that idiocy and be confused by the size of the budget. Yeah, I've got lots of ideas. There are a couple of different directions you go with it. I would be very tempted to essentially try and make it the pastiche parody role-playing game for all science fiction, right? So have a fake Star Trek kind of Orville-inspired region, and make sure that I've got fake lensmen who might, the magnifying men that have magnifiers that magnify their mental powers. The magnification and magnet is in every, so you got magnification ships and magnification rays.
I'm at a disadvantage in this conversation because I never saw the Coneheads movie.
Oh, you should watch the Conehead movie.
I only know them from Saturday Night Live skits.
Well, it's the same basic setup, except you actually go to Rimulac and they use a giant special effects budget.
Yeah, well,
That's great bass.
We would have to have That's Great Bass somewhere in the role-playing game, maybe as a chapter title, for bringing in other elements of Saturday Night Live, depending on what the license allowed for. But I think you could make a parody sci-fi role-playing game with like two modes, right? You've got Stranded on a Brutal Primitive Planet mode, where we make fun of Earth and how stupid it is, and everyone gets to play a incredibly powerful and efficient alien that just has a weird quirk that they have to live with, and we all laugh about how those quirks interact with things. And then you've got, Narfel the Garthok, which is a section on warfare between the Coneheads and the Blockheads and the Magnifying Men, and the Star Battlers and all the other weird fun. And if we can, we get a license for the Schwartz in there.
And the potato folks.
And the Potato Folks, who, when they are ejected out of an airlock, go, blah, blah, which is a joke for exactly 5 human beings, and none of them are watching this, but one of them is my wife. So, all right, so we're at 5 till. So we are in wrap-up mode now. We have discussed the Attack of the Cones, so the fact that I used that as the title for this episode before I even had the idea of mentioning the Coneheads is now.
Did you run that long con this entire hour? If so, good on you.
No. I came up with that on the spur of the moment. I had absolutely no idea how to make Attack of the Cones make sense as the title until 5 seconds before I sprang it on you.
I'm pretty sure I believe you.
It could go either way, right? At this point, it's just my honesty. You could. It's a level of dark anti-genius either way. Either I was running a long con to get you into a Coneheads role-playing game discussion for more than an hour, which is an impressive dedication to that particular ridiculous, or having done a stupid thing like titling this Attack of the Cones at the beginning, I leapt upon an opportunity to make that make sense. Either way, I'm not proud of myself.
Yeah.
No, I take it back. I'm proud of myself. Either way, I'm not saying it was a good thing, but
the second one is definitely the Cone of Damocles.
Yes, it's absolutely the Cone of Damocles.
So I think Dominic has said the thing that should be the last thing that we say. We need the Turn Over the Lake RPG.
LJ suggesting that our
Turn Over the Lake RPG.
The Turn Over the Lake RPG. Before it'll be fresh, there will be the stench. That'll be our tagline. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for What the What on June the 22nd, 2021. Hopefully we'll be back live next week, Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific time. On my Facebook page, I'll try and put links to that everywhere that's relevant. I'd like to thank Stan for putting up with Attack of the Cones, and my wife for keeping track of the comments, because I cannot pat my head and rub my stomach at the same time, so it's extremely useful to have her producing in the background. Round of applause.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone has a good time, and we'll see you next week for What the What.
Bye, all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, folks.